Thanks for tuning in to another TellyCast. Before this week's show, I wanted to remind you to sign up for our free weekly newsletter, TellyCast Plus. It features interesting TV industry news stories from a different angle and exclusive content, such as Opinion and The Secret Producer, our anonymous TV exec reporting from the front line of TV production. Plus, we're bumping up the goodies with more free downloads of TV industry reports, discounts, and exclusive access to some live TellyCast events we're planning for the months ahead. And you'll only get access to those if you're on our mailing list. And don't worry, we don't like spam either, so we won't do anything weird with your data like sell it to advertisers or anything. Just sign up at our website by searching TellyCast on Google or visiting telecast-podcast.com. Thanks a lot.
TellyCast, the TV industry news review.
On this week's show, I'm chatting with Adam Gee, commissioning editor, creative producer and co-founder of SMART, the London International Smartphone Film Festival. And there's a new SVOD challenger on the block as Struum begins rolling out its Audible-style credits model for specialist streaming services. Global Head of Content Partnerships and Distribution, Kerry gives us the lowdown. It's all coming up on this week's TellyCast. This week, I'm chatting to two guests involved in pushing new boundaries and opportunities in the content industry. Welcome to TellyCast, Adam Gee and Kerry Ball.
Great to be with you.
Hello.
Welcome to the show, guys. Great to have you on. Adam, coming to you first. Now, we've touched on short-form content before on TellyCast, but not for a little while. And I know this is an area where you've got loads of experience. Tell us a little bit about what you're working on right now.
Well, this morning I'm still working on my hangover because we won the BAFTA, the TV BAFTA for short program in the BAFTA awards the other night, and I have somewhat overdone it. So
congratulations, that's fantastic.
Thank you.
Tell us about that. So what award was that, and what was the show?
So it's one of the TV awards that went out on Sunday night. It's for short program, and it was for a film called They Saw the Sun First, which is a really unusual documentary that looks at intergenerational relationships, and it uses dance, but it's not a documentary about dance. It's a documentary through dance. Difficult to describe. Best thing is for people to go and have a look. So you can find it on Vimeo. They Saw the Sun First. It's only 8 minutes, and I guarantee it will lift your day a bit.
All right.
So that's sort of accounts for the inability to string a sentence together at the moment.
Well, you're doing pretty well so far. So we'll make sure that we include a link to We Saw the Sun First in the episode description, so everyone can go and check that out a little bit. And you're also a founder of SMART, the London International Smartphone Film Festival, which is something that really caught my eye the other day. Tell us a bit about that.
Well, it has similar kind of starting point, because 2 years ago, together with my partner in SMART, Victoria Mapplebeck, we made a short film on an iPhone 10, which won the same BAFTA, the short program category, year before last. And that was quite a kind of landmark in our eyes, just in the sense, for smartphone filmmaking, because it was the first smartphone film to win any kind of Academy Award. And it was also the first film made predominantly for YouTube to win any kind of Academy Award. And so it felt like a bit of a coming of age. And then we contemplated various plans, one of which was the Smartphone Film Festival. And we just decided to go for it this spring. And we've done it very quickly because we wanted it to take place before the summer, largely because a lot of the smartphone films that have been made in the last year, and there have been a lot of them for obvious reasons, are about lockdown and COVID and so forth. And our feeling was that by the autumn, everyone would be heartily sick of all that and will want to move on. So this is a sort of a more optimum time to celebrate these films. And of course, you know, when it comes to our second year, we'll be onto a very different world and a very different set of subject matter. But that's kind of why we've done it pretty quickly. So we've closed to entries last week. We had 130 entries, which I think is pretty good for an inaugural year. Very high quality. They range from fully fledged movies down to 1-minute TikToks and all things in between. And we've just done the first round of judging and just super impressed by the quality of what's come in. And it's come in from all over the world, from Venezuela to Taiwan, from Germany to trying to think of other countries, Canada. There are a lot of countries I could choose from, and even Slough. All things between those points. It is very international, but obviously the bulk is from the UK. It's just gone out to our 6 juries yesterday. We've got some amazing jurors from kind of starry, well-known names. So we've got Adrian Dunbar from Line of Duty and Alex Lawther from End of the Effing World on Channel 4, through to really kind of veteran documentary makers like Brian Hill, and really a fantastic mix of people with a fantastic range of skills to help judge the entries. And then next week, we will be announcing the nominations. And then on the 21st, we start the festival itself, which is basically one event for each of the 6 categories, highlighting the winners and the runners-up. And then alongside those, each night, a different sort of 45-minute event showcasing a practitioner. So we open with a woman called Jennifer Zhang, who's made movies on smartphones. We have Brian Hill on the second night, who's just made a film with our poet laureate, Simon Armitage, about what the last year has been like for the country. And then on the third night, we've got a guy called Kevin. Oh God, I'm going to forget his name. I'm not going to worry about it. Anyway, he makes amazing TikTok films. He's actually not super young. He's not your sort of typical TikToker, but he makes really good TikTok films. Kevin, apologies in advance. Honestly, I've lost a lot of brain cells. I'm not kidding.
Okay. Well, we can all forgive you that, Adam. Looking at the categories, so we've got 1 minute or under.
Yeah.
We've got drama scripted 10 minutes or under.
Yeah.
Documentary factual 10 minutes or under. Drama scripted over 10 minutes. Documentary factual over 10 minutes, and then experimental and other. So it really covers a lot of ground, doesn't it?
By its nature, it covers everything, because basically it's just dividing things into scripted or unscripted, and then different lengths of time, where 10 minutes is the sort of border between short and long. And then because it's got an experimental and other category, anything that doesn't fit into those others will fit into there. So everything is covered, basically.
Right. And it's what's going to be really interesting, I think, it's almost going to be a bit of a time capsule I'm expecting to see when these come in, because, as you say, they were all filmed in lockdown. They don't necessarily need to be lockdown themed, presumably, but subject matter will probably lend itself, as you say, to that.
Well, it's just, obviously it's the period that these have been made in. But first of all, anyway, we extended our eligibility period prior to last year because it's our inaugural year. So we wanted to sweep up some of the really good stuff that's been made in the year or two before. So not everything is about lockdown in the festival, but a lot of them are. And they're in really interesting circumstances. There's stuff from China, from these kind of quarantine hotels, which are real kind of insights. There's stuff from Stuttgart, interesting film that looks at, what it's done to employability at the sort of lower end of the job market, the more casual end of the job market. And so there's a lot of stuff covered. A lot of it is much more kind of personal and family-oriented stories. Some of it is insights into the role of healthcare workers. But there's kind of a bit of everything, and some of it is just fun and really not taking itself too seriously. So there's quite a lot of nice sort of scripted comedy that is just nice and kind of inventive and sort of making light of the difficulties of the production context.
And in terms of the entries that you've seen so far, without probably naming any, obviously, as you're going through the judging process, but would you say that any of these are broadcastable? Pretty
much all of them, because you have to realize that smartphones have come on a great deal. So there are no issues of picture or sound with smartphones anymore. I mean, they're like 4K picture. Audio is great, and the kind of audio accessories are very cheap and easy to get your hands on. So it's just a non-issue. And for example, there's a terrific documentary that's come in from Iran. Oh yeah, there's another country I forgot, but that was one of the more exotic ones. But it's as beautiful cinematography as you'd ever see, and a terrific story, and it's more than broadcastable. Puts a lot of broadcast to shame. Those sort of hierarchies are probably kind of I don't know, they're a kind of distraction or an irrelevance, really. So, when you look at it across the board, there's been a number of feature films and movies that have been made on smartphones. I wouldn't say it's kind of mainstream, but you've got names like Steven Soderbergh, Sean Baker, in Europe, Claude Lelouch. There's a number of, Michel Gondry. There's a number of well-known directors that have turned to the smartphone, some with huge enthusiasm, of which, Steven Soderbergh is probably top of the list because he's always been a sort of video and gadget guy from the beginning of his career. And then in television, we've had interesting commissions during the lockdown from streamers. For example, Netflix did a great series called Homemade, which was substantially shot on smartphones by people like Kristen Stewart and Gurinder Chowdhury. Then we've had very interesting developments in television around smartphones. So there are new technologies that have been deployed substantially for the first time during lockdown. So, for example, Shine TV did a series called A Very British Lockdown, using smartphones and a sort of very easy to get your hands on and reasonably priced technical infrastructure, which basically does away with the satellite truck and means you can kind of broadcast out of people's homes, directing and shaping the program remotely. And so that's a real development. It's a bit like if you think about what drones did to helicopter shots, i.e. made them redundant and ridiculously expensive overnight. That's what this does to satellite trucks, really, to a large extent. So we're not going to go backwards on this because it makes more sense and it's cheaper, more cost effective, and just as good a quality of image being broadcast. But what it meant for Shine in this particular show was that they could direct contributors remotely and therefore have contributor shot that's well framed, well thought through, captures the right stuff, pointing at the right thing at the right time. So that's TV. But actually, really, the interesting stuff is happening on mobile oriented platforms like TikTok, which is why we had that 1 minute category, because we wanted to connect with that place where the most fresh and interesting and innovative filmmaking is actually happening. The movie stuff is something of a distraction. The TV stuff is really quite interesting, but perhaps a sort of subtle and of interest to the industry more than the viewer in terms of how productions are made. But the sort of really interesting stuff is really in these digital platforms where younger generations in particular, but not exclusively, are just making amazing stuff that's different and fresh and feels intimately linked to the smartphone.
And presumably the quality of productions that you're seeing coming through, really helps unearth some, quite remarkable new talent when it comes to directors, or when it comes to, or presumably most of those submitting entries are shooting directors. They're just one person bands, if you like. They're individuals that are creating their films.
Certainly, a lot of them are, and there's a good number of first-time filmmakers included as well, which is great because it's intimately linked with this big subject of our age, which is sort of diversity and access. But it obviously is a major contribution to that because pretty much all of us have got a smartphone that's capable of producing really high-quality video. We can get the software very reasonably, and it's not even essential, but there's software that helps give you more control over the camera in your phone. And then obviously everyone has access to the distribution as well. So what that kind of translates to is that the things that ultimately really matter are talent and vision. And really, that's all that ultimately matters, that everyone's on the level playing field around those two key areas. It's very much part of the concept of smart that it helps when it comes to diversity of all kinds. And I don't just mean ethnicity and race, or gender, but all the other aspects of diversity as well. So stuff around kind of neurodiversity, other capabilities, mental health, all these things. And I suppose maybe above all, the whole question of kind of socioeconomic backgrounds are really important and are a little bit overshadowed by the big things on the landscape. But ultimately, that's actually probably where we can make kind of most impact, and it's sort of still somewhat neglected. So it's a big part of our agenda to catalyze the access of more different people to the industry so we get more different, fresher, more innovative stories.
And coming back to what you said earlier on about, walking around with a relatively new iPhone, which I've got in my pocket. And I'm sure when I see these entries, I'll be shamefully looking at my own short videos that I put together. I mean, in terms of what you need in terms of apps and in terms of sound and light equipment, as you say, it's pretty accessible, isn't it? You don't need to spend thousands of pounds on all of these other accessories. And I would imagine some of your entrants have literally just using the bare phone, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I mean, you don't need anything extra, and you don't even need, you don't need the most up-to-date phone either. But, there are some benefits. So as I say, Filmic Pro is probably the preeminent app. It gives you more control over your phone, which means that you can sort of mix up the pictures a bit more, different depths of field and so forth, and just generally have more control. Obviously, audio is always critical, and so getting kind of external mics and stuff, that is not expensive, and it's a worthwhile investment, but it's not essential. The stability of the phones is much improved, but there are very cheap kind of gimbal type stabilizers, which are kind of worth getting and using for some stuff. So none of it's expensive and none of it's essential.
Right, okay.
There are times when you want to ditch it anyway, because one of the benefits of smartphones, apart from the fact that it's on you all the time, is that it's kind of unintimidating and it's really familiar. So there are times when you just want to look like an amateur but behave like a professional. In other words, you ditch your gimbal and your mics, and you just shoot like any Joe or Josephine on the street, and you can exploit a kind of intimacy and a kind of grey area, which you can't with any other sort of form of filmmaking. So the bottom line is, there are certain things that you can film on smartphones that you can't really film in any other way, and that's usually to do with a degree of kind of intimacy and the subjects being relaxed, or sometimes it's to do with access to spaces that you can't normally traipse into with a film crew.
Where do we go to actually see any of the submitted films?
The kind of core of operations is the website, which is at smartfilmfest.net, and you can access most things through there and most information through there. And then there'll also be details of the program, so you can come see the best of the crop in the week of 21st to 25th of June, when we'll be showing each category one by one across the 5 nights. We'll also really kind of do our best to amplify what has come in the wake of the festival as well. And part of the prize for winners is an opportunity to get distribution through Little Dot Studios, through their Real Stories channel. and some of their other channels. So Little Dot are an amazing outfit. They publish 5.5 billion, that's billion with a B, views worth of video every month. So they're on a very grand scale. So the opportunity to get distribution through Little Dot, which is part of All Three Media, is an amazing opportunity. They also, apart from a kind of gong, they also get some mentoring from some of the amazing people that are involved, judging and generally with the festival. So that will also be something worth getting.
Definitely. Well, we'll also feature the winner on the TellyCast Plus newsletter, which goes out every Friday. So we'll put links to that. So lots of our industry subscribers can go and take a look at that.
That'll be brilliant.
Yeah. And so in terms of where smartphone filmmaking goes from here, I mean, obviously, most of us got 4K filmmaking capabilities in our pocket. With the next generation of smartphones, what will that enable us to do? And how do you think smartphone filmmaking can develop from here?
I think the sort of bottom line really is that it just deserves its place on the playing field of mainstream production right now. We don't have to wait for the next generation because certainly in terms of technical quality, that's already here. So it doesn't mean that things like kind of honing the craft changes in any way. Like there's nothing about smartphone filmmaking that means you need any less training or any less honing of your of your abilities and of the craft itself. But it's a completely mainstream type of filmmaking which enables you to film certain things and should be one of the sort of key tools of mainstream production. So I think that's the bottom line of it, really. We all should keep an eye on that kind of amazing energy that we see around us, especially on sort of digital platforms, of just new and different ways of telling stories and making films. In lots of cases, you have to wade through an awful lot of crap to get to the nuggets. Nonetheless, the nuggets are there and they point in some interesting kind of creative directions. I suppose also, even though the film festival is, as I say, it sort of pretty much covers every genre and every length, I'm a big advocate of short films because I think telly is, outside of drama, which is its own kind of little bubble in a way, but especially factual TV, which I worked in, for 13 years at Channel 4, telly is pretty kind of flabby in the mainstream these days, and it's difficult to watch sometimes. And the more time you spend making short films, the more intolerant you get of how slow the storytelling is and how repetitious and how formatted and formulaic it is and kind of dull and moribund. I do think there's a lot of potential and of mileage in smartphone filmmakings, and it's where a lot of the real art of our industry is.
I suppose you could draw the parallel with David Hockney having adopted the iPad as something that he could work in as a world-renowned artist, and now he displays a lot of his iPad work, right? So in a way that this is actually a similar parallel when it comes to the moving image and technology enabling anybody and democratizing the filmmaking process, really.
The Hockney example is a slightly tricky one because, I mean, some people are sort of dubious about the quality of what he's produced on those machines, but it's sort of missing the point in a way because he's been an experimenter all the way through his career. I mean, he experimented with Polaroid photos to great effect in the 70s. And this is a long time ago and probably forgotten in the mist of time, but he did a great program called Painting with Light, where he used Quantel Harry, I think it was, or it was Paintbox, I think. But he used an early TV graphics machine to have a go at making art on. So he's been doing it for long before the iPad was a glimmer in the eye of its creator. But he is he's open and he's open to new tools. And I guess that's also, that's very much what the smartphone thing's about.
Well, we'll put a link to SMART, the London International Smartphone Film Festival, in the episode description, so you can all go and have a check out and see what you can see up there. But it sounds fascinating.
Lovely, thanks.
Kerry, welcome to TellyCast. Great to have you on the show. Now, today, streaming is dominated by the big subscription services like Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime Video, Apple TV. We all know these behemoths that are going and swallowing each other up. And together, according to Nielsen, they have about a 75% share of the streaming market. Now, we've also seen an explosion in other more niche SVOD services over the past few years. Now, you're global head of content partnerships and distribution at Struum. Now, for those who haven't heard about the company, can you tell us a little bit about Struum? Because it's a very new business, isn't it?
Yes, it is, and the whole Struum concept has developed incredibly quickly. From conception to launch. The four founders that are behind it, Lauren de Villiers, Paul Pastor, Eugene Liu, and Thomas Wadsworth, all worked across Disney together. Lauren, Eugene, and Thomas across Disney Plus and its forerunner Disney Life. And Paul was part of the initial team on Hulu from the ABC side. And they each bring very deep knowledge in their areas. So Thomas, it comes from Disney Imagineering. Eugene owned, a good portion of the stack at Disney Plus. Paul, I've already talked about, and Lauren is, amazing at that product management and idea conception. And Lauren had really come up with it based on sort of her addiction to ClassPass, which we'll talk about later. But and they then went out for funding. I talked to Paul very early on from the rights side and the distribution side, and thought it was a fascinating idea. But they took it out to VCs. They very quickly managed to get Michael Eisner and Andy Redman from the Tornanta company to take most of the seed round. And notable investors also like Kevin Mayer and Elaine Paul. So, and it has a particularly strong board as well, with Nancy Tellem and Donald Hicks and Ben Pine. So it was a great team for me to get involved with. I've always been fascinated with new services. My entire career has been about launching new distribution platforms and new models, from early days at NBC when we launched GTO, and it took 8 hours to download a movie, to the first Roku channel. Sorry, one of the first Roku channels at Shine Now when I was at Shine. And then later, working through a lot of the Discovery digital product from the international side and getting distribution and out into the market. So it's a great team. It's a very deep team. Everybody brings both a deep knowledge of their area and their piece of expertise, and we all know each other pretty well. I worked with Paul and Lauren when I was at Discovery because they also worked there. As I say, all the rest of the founders had worked together when they were at Disney. And so Struum is a new breed of streaming service with a mission to really streamline streaming for all of those outside the big guys. For a monthly fee, you receive a number of credits, which you can use on a central platform across a wider range of streaming services. They specialize in many different genres and many focuses, have a deep content lineup in those verticals. And the app lets you enjoy and discover, use your credits across these services, but it also lets you see which services you're using a lot, which services you value, and then you can add that service as a managed service at the post using the credit model.
Okay, so for example, I'm watching History Hit and I'm watching Insight TV and I'm watching IndieFlix. And I'm sort of just looking at various shows that each of they have got. And then I decide I want to subscribe and go further. It's like, actually, now I've tried them, I actually would like to subscribe. So I subscribe, for example, for Insight TV through the Struum platform, essentially. And then I would access it via that?
Indeed. So the credit system allows you to dip in and out, try services, understand what services, get under the hood really of what's in there and how that works for you. We took a very expensive decision at the beginning of the process to ingest 100% on our platform. And the reason we did that is we can then see what people are going to watch. We can create different cohorts of users. So the recommendation engine and the discovery will, on one side, suggest content that is suggested to like-minded viewers as yourself. It also allows us to go one step further because it essentially allows our services to stand side by side each other, to widen that funnel and find new consumers that they may have had a lot of difficulty reaching out to directly. These are the second adopters, the tertiary adopters that are very costly when you run a vertical subscription service to find. But by creating these different cohorts of users, by suggesting similar content or like-minded content, we can help them widen that funnel.
And that's the key, isn't it? It's about discovery and aggregation. And that's where we're going. And we've heard a lot of that from various analysts and reports that we've seen, and the direction of travel and billing relationships are also incredibly important when it comes to SVODs.
Yes. I mean, we built Struum on three tenets: access, discovery, and value. And we see ourselves very much as a complement to our partners and our service providers. We lean heavily in the service into brands and services becoming the signpost for the content as well as the brand within the service. The more consumer enablement, the more engagement we can drive, the more people that will come to the platform and sign up within each of our services to both their SVOD or enjoy the content. I mean, in today's landscape, people are already cherry picking content. Free trials are essential, but a bit of a frenemy because people will see the content. Consumers are increasingly savvy on how they deal with SVOD services. Either there's a bill shock scenario where they don't sign up because they're scared of forgetting about it and finding that subscription in a few months' time, or they're just really savvy and they know how to operate in the free trial. Or even if there's not a free trial, they just look for that piece of content. So it's very difficult to then widen the net. In this world, if a consumer is coming into your service to cherry pick, one, you get paid from a service provider, you get paid from that side. But also it allows the consumers to see more and more of your content and create that value dynamic in the consumer's brain that actually this is a service that it's worthwhile me subscribing to and saving my credits to discover a range of other services.
How many different services have you got on Struum so far?
We have 59 services signed up to date. We launched a couple of weeks ago with around 25 of those services. You can imagine getting all of those assets on the platform takes a little bit of time, but we are already nearing 10,000 assets. We have 44,000 assets signed up already and more to come. So we are, charging ahead really. The services span all sorts of genres. And that is the point. The point is to be able to enable discovery and see the people who may enjoy action sports and motorsports, or history and natural history, geography, travel, and be able to create all of those different ways into the service. We have people from people like BBC Selects, so bringing people from other parts of the world into the US, and we will be doing the same as we launch internationally, the other way round.
For a consumer, you're hoping that Struum will sit alongside as the fourth or fifth service to Netflix, Disney Plus, and Amazon, for example. It will sit there essentially as a gateway to all of these other niche services. when it comes to app distribution, will we be seeing Struum on Samsung TVs, for example? Will it be in our living room as opposed to just on our iPads? Or what's the distribution strategy for the app?
We have huge ambitions, as you can imagine. And certainly with our backers, that is the very essence of the whole service. You're right in saying, what do we see ourselves in? We see ourselves as that next generation. Right now, you choose your streaming services, and once you've probably choose your first top 3, then you're in this huge world of over 300 services in the US alone right now. And so we see ourselves as being a number 4, a number 5. I mean, it's fascinating that only a couple of years ago, people were talking about subscriber fatigue hitting in at about 4.8 subscriptions. Before, only a couple of years before that, the number of 3 was banded around. We're already seeing, 50%, nearly 50% of US households who have 4 or more subscriptions. Our aim is to be that fourth platform where for a monthly fee you can get access to all of these platforms, and then you can manage them centrally through the Struum subscription.
So it's going to be a choice between Struum and Warner Brothers Discovery, I guess, when it comes to that fourth service.
Maybe, who knows? But it doesn't. There's a lot to evolve in the streaming landscape at this point in time. People are going to have different preferences, and as they juggle of do they have Netflix, Amazon, and Warner's Discovery, there's still then a fourth place. They may have 4, and then there's a 5th place. So I don't see it as going head to head. What we're doing is really creating a balanced landscape for everyone else to come onto the platform and enjoy Discovery through us as another choice in the consumer's portfolio of products.
A couple of weeks ago, you've launched. So the service is now available in the US. Is it only in the US right now, or is it available worldwide?
The service is only available in the US right now. It will indeed be everywhere. We have a commercial launch in the July period where we will be available on iOS, Chromecast, web, and Android. We are then working on our 10-foot experiences across all different smart TVs and OTT platforms as we speak. So the idea will be by the autumn, certainly by winter, will be available on all those major platforms.
And then at that point, presumably, then it's a case of, right, you need to go and tell consumers that Struum is out there. Yes,
indeed. And there's some really interesting and unusual advantages that the credit model has, especially when you're doing distribution deals. Usually when people do bundle models with telcos, etc., you're looking at bundling monthly subscriptions because that works with the way that a mobile bill is issued, etc. The great thing about the credit model is it sort of democratizes some of that distribution as well, because you can still do that, but you can also talk about marketing distribution deals where you're bundling a certain amount of credits with a product, of which that enables you to go to lower price products to be able to open that net and get more people to see the platform. So we will be working through distribution, the sort of traditional, if you like, distribution deals, but there's a whole host of new ways we can reach the consumer, which works both for us and our marketing distribution partners.
But what's the profile of an ideal content service partner for Struum?
The wonderful thing about Struum, actually, is there's not one ideal service partner. The fact is, we only succeed if our service providers succeed. And to do that, we need to create breadth and depth at the same time. So you may have some services that are broader around a particular demographic, or you may have services that are deeper around one particular genre. And for us, what we need to do is bring all of those services together, because by doing that, it becomes a data play. It becomes, we really understand how we can create these different cohorts of consumers and then maximize the presentation of those service providers to our users. The users see more content that they wouldn't have found directly, but because of shows that they've watched within their portfolio and within that they've exchanged credits for, we can then start sort of lifting services up that may never have been found. So I don't think we have an ideal profile. I think, like everything though, strong content, a particularly loyal fan base, and then an additional fan base, because the loyal fan, if you are Echo Boom Sports or Fuel TV, two of the platforms on our service, you will be able to market to your first adopters and get them onto the platform. The people that are much harder to find are the people who quite like some of those action sports, who quite like snowboarding or quite like, and it isn't until they've been able to discover that and those services be raised to the consumer's usage that they're going to know.
So if I've just set up my, I don't know, let's say it's an anime SVOD, let's say. There's a few of those, a few of them out there, I realise.
There are quite a few.
Let's say I have a very specific type of anime. Do I need to be a certain size? Do I need to have a certain number of subscribers already to enter the conversation with Struum? If I'm just literally launching and I want to scale as fast as possible, I'm obviously going through my core audience and trying to convert them. Mm-hmm. Do I need to get to a certain size before Struum are interested in partnering, or are you just happy to speak to anybody?
Obviously, content is king, right? And depth of content is king. So I think we look at services that have quality content and that reach out to a demo or a genre that we believe will be strong in the platform. We have how new they are or how long in the tooth they are is not really irrelevant. It's what is under the hood and how does it sit within our current grouping of services. Struum could get, we could, and we are approached a lot across many, many SVODs. So it could become the one destination for everyone else. But we will, initially at this point, we are looking at making sure that we represent every genre and we're deep in every genre and that there is a loyal base for those sort of products. It might not be the actual service, but for that for that avenue.
So when I'm looking at the carousel, so I open up Struum and I look lots of different streaming services on there. Who gets on the carousel? What about the preference of placement on the carousel? Because presumably there are premium slots on there. How does that work?
We've structured the service with regards partnerships and marketing from two sides. There's the editorial element, so there are hero images. The interface is beautifully slick, and as I said before, we use each of those brands have a reel that have a brand placement on that reel. And as you enter those brands, you end up in a walled garden of all of the content from those services. So you can quickly see the brand, click on your brands. It's all horizontally scrollable, vertically scrollable, and be able to enter that brand and see it straight away. But there's also the algorithmic side, which is important, particularly when you're talking about, widening the funnel. And so the data play and the algorithm is also connecting these different consumers who may not have been connected in different ways, but are through their watching profile. We are working. We've taken a very, very heavy lean into our brands, and therefore we are ensuring that and the second hire after me actually was a guy called Ali Upham, who used to run editorial in the Apple UK store and also in the Discovery Plus store in the UK. And he's very adept at ensuring that across the portfolio, all our brands get served up in terms of the editorial side and then the algorithmic. So it's a dual approach to make sure that content is being discovered based on what you watch, and then also adding something new based on calendar, based on the editorial calendar of each and every one of our services. So we're working through that with all of our partners. There's also many different front doors into the content or service within the app. So you can look at things by genre, or you can look at them by brand. You can look at them by whatever's trending, whatever's up next. You can look at it by type of content, whether it's TV, movie, shorts. So there are, in each different screen, there is the same structure, but it brings up new services and new content all of the time.
And just so that everyone's really clear, when you open Struum, it's a very familiar carousel, and essentially you're not looking at a host of services. You're actually looking at content. You're looking at, the latest move, Planets of the Apes. So I want to go and watch Planets of the Apes, and actually that is the hero image, as opposed to obviously the service that it's hosted on is a much smaller logo within that actual visual interface.
Yes, I mean, that's right. And we have lent into, a very intuitive, the way when we're not trying to reinvent the wheel that people scroll on subscription devices. However, what I would say is every piece of content is tied to the service and the brand. And when you go into that content, you come to a page which will have the brand on top and then a reel of all other content. So it's very, very important to us that the content and the brand go hand in hand. You're not just seeing the artwork. You're seeing the artwork underscored by the service it's from. Even when you go to playback, there is a 3-second bumper which will have the name and the brand of that service. So you still know you are in that service and watching content from that service. And we never delineate a brand and a service.
Okay. One last question. So when it comes to discoverability, because we know this is so important, even for all the major SVODs, and how much of a focus they put on discoverability of individual titles within their carousels, etc. If I'm an SVOD and I've got a marketing budget and it's really important for me to actually get some more subscriptions, is there an internal market when it comes to being able to place your content in a premium position?
No, we're certainly not, right now, they're all our children, if you like. But one aspect maybe I didn't describe properly before was the credits are set by our service partners. So they say how many credits are for each piece of content. Therefore, as a content partner, you're using Struum to widen that funnel, but you're also seeing all the other services that are on our platform. We took a really holistic view of how we put the partners beside each other and how we display them to the user. But from the content partner side, they are looking at how many credits they set against their film, their series, their library series, their shorts, etc. What that allows our partners to do is follow the distribution strategy that they're really looking for. So if you are looking at maximizing the value of the credit model, then there'll be one set of pricing that will work to do that. If you are looking to funnel as many people to be a subscriber of your service within Struum, that will suggest another set. And we are going to, we are, as we speak, developing tools that will give that sort of pricing, that credit allocation mechanism to arm our partners at being able to exploit their services the way they wish.
It's all about the data.
Indeed.
And it's everybody talks about Amazon as being, Prime and delivery service. They're not. It's a data company, and everybody's kind of coming around to that fact now. In terms of the data that you'll be generating around content, is that something that you're sharing, you're completely open with when it comes to the SVOD service partners that are part of Struum?
Well, obviously we have various privacy laws we need to stand behind. But within a service, we are aiming to share as much data as we're allowed to. We will have various functionality that people can opt in to services if they're signing on, and communications from there. We will be able to. We are developing. It will be ready very shortly. A data dashboard that our service providers will be able to go in and see where they are, see how their content's performing. So in terms of the sharing of data, as I said, the idea is that we are complementary to all of their other front doors into their service. And we want to be seen as an add-on to that, and that means sharing data. We've all been on the other side, and we all know how hard it is to persuade people inside our companies to go on a platform when you get very little data out. So we will, one of the central tenets is exactly that, is enabling a structure that our partners find additional consumers, find that second and third adopter and widen the funnel, but also manage to understand how the content is performing on the service.
And now it's time in the show for Kerry and Adam to pick their stories of the week, the TV industry news items that have caught their eye in the past 7 days. Kerry, what's your story of the week?
So unsurprisingly, my story of the week is very related to what I'm doing at Struum. But Parks and Associates every year or so release a study talking about how many people have OTT or subscription services. In the US this week, they announced that 82% of US broadband households have at least one SVOD, and 46% have at least 4 OTT services. Now, what's fascinating about that is not those statistics. I think, many people are aware, particularly over the pandemic, the boom and the increasing boom within subscription uptake. But what is interesting is how that compares to even 2 years ago. So 2 years ago, that stat stood at about 64% had at least one SVOD platform, and 36% had 2 or more SVODs. So not only have we gone up in the percentage of multiple SVODs that we're measuring here, we've gone up in how many additional SVODs that they have. And of the 20% that are left, you can sort of pick out. It's half of those are retired, 93% of those don't have children at home, 3/4 are over 55 plus. The big question that all leads to is churn and subscriber acquisition costs. And, that's why this all feeds back into Struum, really, because what we are trying to do is create that platform where people can enjoy the content, but also create the value dynamic in the user's psyche that this service is worth subscribing for, and combating that churn argument.
And obviously, we've also seen everybody turning to SVODs and AVODs as well during the pandemic.
Indeed.
And we're coming out of that now. So there is likely to be drop-off, isn't there? And I think there's a lot of stats that we've seen, particularly for the big SVODs, that, Netflix might not expect the same sort of growth that it's had, and the same in some other markets. And obviously, that's all going down to regional strategies adapting as a point of that. It's going to be an interesting next phase of the SVOD evolution, if you like, the landscape.
Yeah. There was another article yesterday on that point, that in Fierce Video, talking about the fact that there is in the first quarter this year compared to first quarter last year, a drop off in terms of each individual service, SVOD service, and their acquisition rates. I think, though, it's a bigger picture than that, because there's obviously, a hump in the middle of there. Where we are now compared to 2 years ago is still a lot higher. And more than that, it's encouraging people to go beyond the original, the big 5 or 6 SVOD players. So it is fragmenting even more. It's also making people look at different business models. So from subscription to AVOD to this credit model, it's making people realize there are different ways to consume the content that might match their profile better.
It's going to be even more fascinating over the coming months, and when you guys launch to consumers around the world as well. So we're going to be watching very closely, and all the very best of luck in your launch.
Thanks very much.
Adam, what's your story of the week?
Mine is from The Guardian, although it was in a number of different papers this week. Headline, gambling logos feature 700 times in football match, says Channel 4 documentary. So this is about a documentary that went out last night, Monday the 7th, I think it was. And it was looking at the role of gambling sponsorship in sports and in football. And this number is actually, in a sort of a typical game, a person, could be a young person, could easily be a young person, has 716 exposures to gambling in a match, even when there's no advertising, just from flashes of the kind of pitch side hoardings and so forth. Yeah. And my kind of reason for picking this story is I don't get why we allow gambling to have the sort of mainstream acceptance that it seems to have, to be accepted as a norm. I entirely reject that. I think it's one of the worst kinds of addiction. It's even worse than drink and drug addiction, really, because it's so pernicious and corrosive, toxic, and there's just no joy in it. So it's almost like the opposite of sports. No health, no joy. It's like anti-sport. And sometimes watching Channel 4 late at night, for example, and it's not the only one, it's just depressing the amount of advertising. All the advertising is for gambling, not necessarily betting, but the other side of the industry, the casinos and so forth, which is intimately related. And in fact, the football stuff is like the gateway drug to the casino stuff.
It does remind me of actually Formula One in the 80s, when it was trying to wean itself off the tobacco sponsorship. And you're right. I mean, surely the time's come now when, I know there are various things that a lot of clubs do. They have junior sponsors for kids' shirts. So, kids aren't walking around with betting logos on. But actually, once they're 18, I suppose they are. But even so, that's not the point. The point is the prevalence of these gambling brands. It's just overwhelming. And I think, you're right. I mean, where are all the FMCG brands that want to sponsor clubs? I know that you've got certain, like Chevrolet, I know they're a major sponsor in the Premier League, and there's lots of other examples, but surely they've got the budgets and the exposure that they would bring.
I mean, I suspect they're kind of outbid, but that's not really the point. It's broader than this. It's about accepting gambling as a norm in society. I just think that needs to be questioned, because it's not a norm, and it's not good for individuals or society.
And now it's time in the show where my guests get to nominate their hero of the week and who or what they're telling to get in the bin. Adam, who's your hero of the week?
My hero of the week is someone called Rosie Van Os. I've never met her, but I watched her in one of the entries to Smart, to the London International Smartphone Film Festival. And she's in a film by a first-time filmmaker called Kitty Camilleri, who is 27. And she submitted this very interesting film called 1 Year, which is basically very simple. You just see Rosie, who is an ICU nurse or junior doctor, walking around on a rainy day in some kind of heathland, and she just tells you what the last year has been like from her point of view. And you really don't need any further pictures other than her face in the rain, which somehow just has it just is reminiscent of tears, really. It's really atmospheric, and it's a real insight into what it has been like for healthcare professionals during the last year. So she is my heroine of the week, both of them, Rosie and Kitty, for putting it on film with her smartphone. They're also hero of the year, I think, I can say without too much fear of contradiction.
Yeah, absolutely. And who or what are you telling to get in the bin?
What I'm telling to get in the bin is an advert that I saw in the window of a betting shop in our high street yesterday with odds on England winning the Euros. So we have quite a short high street. It's pretty kind of middle class, and yet it still has 3 betting shops on it. So at the risk of banging on about a particular thing, it's again about this normalization of gambling on TV and elsewhere. And also something in the poster, which was, like I say, it was odds on England winning. It's that rather inflated nationalistic hope that doesn't really come from a good place that gets wheeled out every time there's an international football competition. But I guess bringing it back to TV, a thing that really annoys me. So this could also be, this is a sort of a thing that could also go in the bin. But when I'm watching TV late at night and I see these ads for casinos and gambling, we have this thing from Gamblerware that says something like "Stop when the fun stops," or no, "When the fun stops, stop." I think that's the slogan. But it's completely fake. If you actually watch it, they don't even give enough time for you to read it, and it gets kind of clipped in the ad. So there's no sense that any of them really believe that stuff, and we know they don't believe it. So I think that would go in the bin for me, both that awful unbelieved in slogan and this kind of advertising that I walked past yesterday in the street, all part of this normalization of an industry that's kind of substantially operated from overseas, got really patchy regulation. They don't check age properly. So it's an all-round toxic aspect of our society, and I happily chuck it in the bin.
All right. And that's a double bin. I think a deserved double bin there, Adam.
Yeah, double bin. Yeah, both bits in there.
Kerry, who's your hero of the week?
So I have a love of Cornwall, and I think the team at Carbis Bay Hotel in St Ives just winning the fact that they've managed to get the entire G7 through their doors, as well as the sun that they're getting to show Cornwall in its most beautiful. So we have the world's media eyes trained on Cornwall, and the Carbis Bay Hotel.
All right. So Carbis Bay is your hero of the week.
Yeah, I think what an amazing thing to pull off. I was down there last week and we were just seeing all the signs go up on the roads. And no doubt there are, a lot of locals it will be causing a lot of difficulty. But I think at a time like now, having Cornwall being beamed by the media into so many countries around the world can only be a good thing.
Good luck to everybody involved in that. It is a massive undertaking.
It's a massive undertaking, yeah.
Cornwall will probably never see anything like it again, but good luck to everybody involved in that. And who or what are you telling to get in the bin, Kerry?
Oh, mine's a bit, my get in the bin, I did not want to be political, so...
No, everybody else is.
I know, but I'm not. Mine is a bit lighthearted, I guess. I'm not going to be political. I think we've all heard enough about various politicians here and in the States over the last few years. But mine is really all the critics of the Friends reunion. I'm a massive Friends fan. And I was in LA at the filming of the very last episode. And just seeing as a production, those cast members come together, 17 years on, and still having that connection, both with each other and with the fans of the show, was sort of a walk down memory lane. And so people took it really seriously. The Guardian had an article claiming what a disgrace it was. But, I thought it was fun. It was nice. And it was great to see how a production like that can stand the test of time, connect to so many ages and audience around the world. And we're still all tuning in wherever we were.
I have to say, I'm not a huge Friends fan, but my 11-year-old daughter is a massive Friends fan. She watches nothing else. So that meant I sat through the whole show and watched it. And actually, you know what, as a piece of TV, in terms of the guys at Fulwell that put the show together, it was a really compelling view. And it was, it was a couple of hours long, I think. So it kept me watching till the end anyway.
It was, and I hope I've aged as well in the 17 years, and I think all of all the cast did, rather.
Yeah, no, it was a good piece of TV. Let's face it. And obviously, it was meant to be the big launch for HBO Max as well, but it was much delayed piece of TV. Kerry, Adam, thank you so much for coming on the show. Really enjoyed hearing more about Struum and also Smart, the London International Smartphone Film Festival. It was great to have you both on the show. Really enjoyed chatting to you. All the best with your various businesses.
Thank you so much.
Thanks very much for having me. I've really enjoyed the conversation, and I really like the programme. It's a great thing to listen to when you're going for a run. Passes the time very happily.
Well, that's about it for another week's show. As always, thanks for listening. Don't forget to rate and subscribe to TellyCast and share it with friends and colleagues. And a quick reminder to sign up for our free newsletter called TellyCast Plus. It's packed with interesting TV industry stories of the week you may have missed, downloadable reports and surveys, and exclusive insight and opinion. And it's all completely free. Just visit our website to sign up at telecast-podcast.com. That's telecast-podcast.com. And you can also follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. TellyCast was edited by Ian Chambers and recorded in London. Until next Thursday, as always, stay safe. Thanks for listening to another TellyCast. A quick reminder to sign up for our free weekly newsletter, TellyCast Plus. It features interesting TV news stories from a different angle and exclusive content, such as Opinion and The Secret Producer, our anonymous TV exec reporting from the front line of TV production. Plus, we're bumping up the goodies with more free downloads of TV industry reports, discounts, and exclusive access to some live TellyCast events we're planning for the months ahead. And you'll only get access to those if you're on our mailing list. And don't worry, we don't like spam either, so we won't do anything weird with your data like sell it on to advertisers or anything. Just sign up at our website by searching TellyCast on Google or visiting telecast-podcast.com. Thanks a lot.